Hello guys, Mrs. Shivo here. I am going to be sharing with you guys today the work that we have been doing to get ready to write this literary essay on your dystopian book club books. Now, for most of you guys, that's going to be your book club book that you are reading with your partner. If you have either me or Mrs. Banasek for academic English, you guys are doing The Giver, and you might have different partners within the class. So I'm going to take you through what we've done so far in how to write a thematic essay to help you if you miss any days or if you're just plain like lost and confused and you kind of need to go back to the drawing board. Remember that your teachers in class, we were talking about all summer in a day, so that we're not giving you answers about your book club book. And I am doing all of this writing in my notebook. Oh, let me switch this so that you guys can see. How do I fix you? Let's see. It's this and oh, here it is. Okay, so that should be going the right way so it looks like words now. Good. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys the actual writing that I'm doing in my notebook. This thinking writing, I think, is the thing that's been the biggest problem for my students. It's such a weird idea that you are coming up with what you're writing as you are writing it, and you guys aren't used to it. That's leading my students to kind of not be doing it. I am telling you, please, please do it. Not just because, you'll make me happy, and that's a good thing. Because it will actually help you to understand your theme better by writing about it. I started out just with the theme of jealousy. So that's the central problem or issue that the characters in the story face in All Summer in a Day. The kids are jealous. So now I'm going to reflect on the parts of the story that pertain to this problem. Well, they lock Margot in the closet. Why do they do that? So we're going to think about, what is the story trying to teach me about the problem or the issue? So I kind of got to that jealousy causes us to be mean. And then important, write long about your thinking. I use the words thinking writing with my students. So here is my thinking writing, and I will read it to you. I said, one theme that I feel like it might be popping up is jealousy. Jealousy can make you mean. When we were reading, we talked about how much we hated the other kids for what they did to Margot. I definitely felt that way too. But then I remembered that there have been times when I was jealous, and I even done something mean because of it. I felt bad, of course, just like Margot's classmates. So I wonder if Ray Bradbury is trying to say something about that. Now I have this idea that jealousy makes people mean. I use some of these prompts, scoot that out of the way, that push writers to speculate about themes in a text. One theory is, on the other hand, perhaps this is convincing because, for example, all of these are really helpful. They are also on this little handout that you guys probably have in your notebooks. I have a ton of extra of these, by the way, so if you need one, just stop by A6. Okay, so now we're ready to move on to the next step, which is to go back to the text and reread closely to see how the theme works in certain critical scenes. So I asked my students to help me with this. But before I did that, I wrote some more. So I went back to the last part of the last step because I wasn't super confident about my theme. And I did some more thinking writing, some more writing long about my theme. And that got me to think that my theme really has to do with entitlement. So I wrote a ton. I'm not going to read it to you. I will spare you. My students already heard it. About like my sister and why I'm jealous of her because she's younger than me and she's still got stuff and that's not fair. And that in college I had to work really hard, so I didn't get the totally relaxed, stress-free college life that the movies said I was going to have. So I got to thinking that in All Summer, are there times when jealousy and entitlement are linked? And my possible theme was then, we feel jealous when we think something is unfair, but that's usually just being entitled on our part. So that's getting a little deeper. That's a lot deeper than jealousy can just make us mean. So then I asked my students, I'm like, okay, now I have this theme that jealousy and entitlement are kind of linked. Can you find stuff in the book that help us to think about that? And yeah, they totally could. So I had different parts here. I'll share the one. I think it was Grace came up with this this example here. She was different, and they knew she was different and kept away. So then we were talking about, well, how do we treat people who are different? Are we always jealous of them? And somebody said, well, no, I'm just lazy because trying to understand people is too hard. And then so we decided that since Margot is different, She isn't entitled to the same thing, and that leads them to lock her in the closet. So you can see my thinking writing is super messy. This is not like fancy writing that's like going to be published in some essay. This is me getting the thoughts out of my head down onto the paper so I can look at them and see if they're any good. And they might not be any good, totally fine. And I think that's where some of my students at least are getting hung up. You don't want to write anything down in your notebook that's going to be wrong. But remember, you can't be wrong as long as you're backing it up with evidence from the text. And the evidence from the text is right here in quotation marks. So we're good there. So awesome. I did that with a couple more examples. Really, your goal is to have these 3 different scenes that you can turn to, because you're going to be able to turn that into 3 paragraphs of an essay. So we're going to move on to the next step, which is what we did last class. We looked for purposeful craft moves that the author used and thought about how they relate to the theme. When we say purposeful craft moves, we're talking about these literary devices that authors use to highlight themes. So I went back into the text. I looked at my scenes again, and I found one that I felt like it had a lot of stuff and also had to do with my theme. So in this part of the story, it says, they turned on themselves like a feverish wheel, all tumbling spokes. Margot stood alone. She was an old photograph, dusted from an album, whitened away, and if she spoke at all, her voice would be a ghost. Now she stood, separate, staring at the rain and the loud, wet world beyond the huge glass. So I looked at it, and I'm like, okay, what's in here? Are there metaphors and similes? Yup. Is there alliteration? Yes. Descriptive words and sentences, short and long sentences? Yes. All of those things. Ray Bradbury does a ton of things. So now I'm going to, again, write about that. When it says think about, it means write about. This thinking, writing that we do. Now, if I went into the text and I didn't see my theme in there, then I would go back here to the drawing board and I would collect ideas about themes in the text again and go through these steps until I found stuff that did have evidence from the text. And I get that that's super frustrating, but this is the time to do that, not when you're looking at an essay and trying to figure out, oh dear. So I started writing and I wrote, and I used a lot of these little transition-y things to help me get my ideas to grow here. In this scene, Ray Bradbury uses a lot of comparisons to describe how the students relate to each other. For instance, he says that the students turn on themselves like a feverish wheel. It's a bit of a strange simile. And then I got distracted and I got to what my real idea really was in here. So I read some stuff that's like not actually useful, but then I got to the real thing. It's hard for me to read in the little screen. I'm just going to read it like this. I'm really focusing on the preposition on. The students turned on each other, not to. I feel like that's significant because students who are excited about something would usually form a crowd working together to some end. But this on suggests that they aren't a crowd, they're a mob. And that negative connotation, along with the other negative words like feverish and tumbling, lead me to think that this group of students is dangerous. Their entitled jealousy has turned them on themselves. In this way, Ray Bradbury may be saying that when we give in to these base feelings, we are betraying one another and ourselves. That sounds like a deep theme. Now I'm excited. So now that I have concrete, detailed, when we have a big idea, we write about the little things. Now that I have something that's those little things, I am going to start preparing what I'm actually going to write. So I made a little outline, and you can see that I'm not done yet because I only have two examples here. There we go. I have my claim. Now my claim, same thing as a thesis statement, it's your theme. So my theme at this point is entitlement leads to jealousy, and that causes problems in society. Then I have 2 examples done, and they're what we were talking about before in my classes. When the rain is about to end and Margot is talking about the sun, the other students turn on themselves. So I made a little purple arrow here that goes to some purple notes that I made in my notebook so I can help. I like color coding in my notes. You may or may not do things the same way. Then I have my second point. Margot is different from the other kids because of her past and her actions. Society tells us that people who are different are not entitled to the same stuff as the majority, which is, of course, uncool, but it is what our society does. And then I'm still working on my third point. I have some more writing earlier on in my notebook. And that's it. If you are able to make it to class on Friday or Monday, depending on whether you're an A or a B day student, with an outline like this, notes, anything that can help you, you are going to be in really great shape to start writing your literary essay, because all of the hard work is already done. And it's just a matter of you Frankensteining it together into something that's cohesive. If